have time before our school starts. Okay, great. Thanks, Kurt. And it looks like Soren's having problems coming in. Oh, I don't know why. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us once again. This is the 8th session of our ADAS trainings, and I'm very happy to report that we've had a tremendous success with the trainings so far. We've had an average of about 52 to 53 faculty joining us every Friday afternoon. So Kurt and I are going to miss you guys after next week. I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to have to plan something else. But we've enjoyed hosting this, and I sure hope that you're getting a lot out of it and that it's going to be proved to be very useful for you and your students going forward. I just wanted to make a couple of quick announcements. Good news for everyone in the Bay Area. The elective proposal for the 9 colleges has been accepted by the BACCC, so they're going to be partially funding the elective subscriptions for the next year. And I just wanted to let all of those who are currently on a trial basis with elective, the colleges, there are, I guess, 8 or 9 colleges who were experimenting with elective, those trials will continue. They will not be interrupted. So originally the trials were to end July 31st, today. They are not going to end, so you have continued access to it. And Darcy Waddell of Electude is being extremely generous and is going to work with us to make sure that you can start with Electude next week. So you'll be prepared for the fall semester. And I know some of you are scurrying around trying to get ready for the online portions of your classes. I just wanted to let you know the way I structured the subscriptions, they're 6-month subscriptions instead of a full 12 months. And I did that for a number of reasons. It gives us more flexibility. So if one of your students takes the class, accesses the subscription code, that subscription stays with that student. If that student drops out or graduates, that subscription is dead. A 12-month subscription would have been dead even if that student had only activated it for 2 weeks. So with a 6-month subscription, we have more flexibility. Also, they have a 2-year life. If a subscription is not accessed or activated, it has a 2-year life. So if you're too busy to get everything in place for fall, and you don't start till spring, that's not a problem. The subscriptions have a 2-year life if they are not activated. Of course, once they're accessed and activated, it's 6 months and that's it. We will have a training webinar set up, hopefully sometime in the next week or two, to get everything in place and have all of your questions answered. Also, we will need a coordinator or administrator from each college to work with Electude and myself to make sure all the subscriptions at your campus are properly managed and make sure that the students have their subscriptions and the teachers also have what they need. The faculty training hopefully will happen, as I said, in sometime the next week or two. So I sent out an email last night and would like your availability for that training so we can set up. The training we'll probably have to do 2 or 3 since some folks are on vacation and also quite busy with the start of the semester. But anyway, that's good news, and I'm excited for everyone on the project, and hopefully all will go smoothly, she says optimistically. Okay, today, we're going to do the 8th training in focusing on connected vehicles. We'll also have some time, as Kurt will explain, to talk about what we're going to do next with ADAS and get your thoughts on how ADAS will be implemented going forward. So Kurt, all yours. Also, if you could all mute yourselves, that would be terrific. Thank you.
All right. Welcome to Friday, everybody. Hopefully we make this quick and painless. There's actually a lot to talk about. Vehicle communications is a big subject, and it's going to get even bigger, especially when 5G and things like that come into play. So it's the same kind of stuff for us. You know, we're going to be about an hour and a half, roughly, depending on how the conversations go. Nobody's an expert, no deep dive, I'm not trying to certify, and we'll just keep rolling. Don't forget, you can get all the presentations as well as the video up on the ATL site. So hopefully that site's seen a big increase in usage and things like that. And anything we develop ends up there. So don't think it goes there and dies. If I start tweaking things behind the scenes after the fact, I'll push them back through and they'll get updated up there, and I'm sure they'll mark them in some way, shape, or form, later, greater versions and stuff. Today we're going to talk about connected vehicles. There's a lot of different aspects to it, what they are, why they are, a little bit of how, and some of their abilities. Some of these things you may be familiar with. Some of them you may be going, holy crap, what do I need that for? But it's actually quite cool. And we'll talk about some ADAS integration ideas. And I know Mark's going to talk a little bit about some of the curriculum that they shared from Evergreen as well. We'll have our Q&A in a few different spots in here. And there's going to be, like always, video clips dropped in. This first one's a little long. It's a little over 7 minutes. But the nice thing about it is it's very over-encompassing. So it talks about a whole lot of stuff. So it's actually a really great clip. And Ed, since I can see your face, when the video starts playing, just give me a thumbs up that you can hear the audio, okay? All right, so let's get going here. As soon as YouTube and everybody catches up.
Imagine a future where vehicles talk to one another and to critical infrastructure. This connected vehicle...
Oops, no, my problem. I can't turn my mic off in the middle of it.
Technology can change our transportation system as we know it by enabling safe, interoperable, networked wireless communications among vehicles, infrastructure, and personal communications devices. Connected vehicles provide drivers with 360-degree awareness of similarly equipped vehicles within a range of approximately 300 meters. This secure system keeps personal information private and does not track your vehicle. Drivers will receive warnings that inform them of potential hazards through a visual display, seat vibration, or tone. These are only warnings. The driver remains in control of the vehicle at all times. However, the technology can also support limited automated functions in which the driver only cedes partial control of the vehicle. Warnings can help drivers respond quickly to avoid potential crashes. For example, the Intersection Movement Assist application warns drivers when it is unsafe to enter an intersection. The Do Not Pass application warns drivers when it is not safe to pass a slower moving vehicle. The Emergency Electronic Brake Light application notifies the driver when an out-of-sight vehicle several cars ahead is braking. And imagine the value of this blind spot warning application, which lets this commercial driver virtually see what's happening in his or her blind spot. Connected vehicles can communicate with smart roadside infrastructure like rail-grade crossings to alert drivers when a train is coming, even if the driver cannot see or hear the approaching train. Connected vehicles can help with weather-related traffic and safety issues too. This is especially true with conditions such as black ice, where the weather may not appear to be dangerous, but the roads are slippery. Information collected from multiple connected vehicles can help determine when a potential hazard exists, such as icy roads, and warn drivers before they experience them. Road weather data from the vehicles can be sent to Traffic Management Centers, or TMCs, providing detailed, real-time information to help monitor and manage transportation system performance. The centers can then take actions like adjusting traffic signals and speed limits, notifying maintenance crews, dispatching maintenance vehicles to the road, and broadcasting warnings for motorists. Motorists can get real-time road weather information from in-car displays by dialing 511 or by listening to highway radio stations. Motorists will be able to get road weather information on their personal devices before leaving home. Connected vehicles can even help us to reduce our carbon footprint and facilitate green transportation choices. Eco lanes are similar to today's HOV lanes, but with a big difference. Motorists in these lanes agree to drive eco-friendly vehicles and drive at a speed that conserves fuel. Drivers will be alerted about the proper speed with dynamic message signs. Connected vehicle applications can help vehicles to reduce idling and unnecessary stops by communicating with smart traffic signals. Traffic signals broadcast data about their current signal phase and timing, and systems inside the vehicles use the data to determine speed advice for drivers. Drivers could then adjust their vehicle's speed to pass the next traffic signal on green or slow down to a stop in the most eco-friendly manner, thereby saving fuel, reducing emissions, and saving drivers money. Connected vehicles can enhance awareness of unexpected roadside incidents like disabled vehicles, car crashes, police activity, and first responders caring for crash victims. Incident zone warnings will alert drivers about incidents ahead and warn them to slow down and change lanes. Communications could also be sent to first responders at the scene via shoulder radios to warn them of the danger of approaching vehicles. Connected vehicle technology can help control traffic flow and reduce the resulting congestion at accident sites before it gets out of hand. With millions of connected vehicles, our ability to share robust data with each other and with smart infrastructure will continue to improve traffic flow, enhance coordination with transit, and make our communities even more safe and livable. The Connection Protection application gives public transportation providers and travelers the ability to communicate two ways. The connected network gives passengers real-time transit information so they can more accurately predict whether they will make their next connection. If multiple people on a delayed bus will miss their next connection, transportation providers can adjust bus departures to enable the passengers to make their next connection. Dynamic ride-sharing applications make the logistics of ride-sharing, scheduling, reliability, and communication easier by connecting vehicles and handheld devices. Applications do the matching for us, authenticating users and connecting riders with drivers. The Cooperative Adaptive Cruise Control app helps drivers avoid stops and starts, which can also help conserve fuel and improve traffic flow. And the Q Warning app monitors traffic data to detect stretches of slow-moving traffic and warn motorists to reduce speeds to avoid potential rear-end collisions. Connected vehicle technology can help pedestrians too. For example, the Mobile Accessible Pedestrian Signal System app sends an automated pedestrian call from the smartphone of a pedestrian with disabilities to the traffic controller, holding the walk signal until the pedestrian has cleared the crosswalk. This application also alerts drivers of the presence of a pedestrian with disabilities at the crosswalk. The potential benefits of a connected transportation system, one that is able to enhance safety and mobility and address environmental impacts, are wide-ranging. They will be felt by every one of us, enhancing the livability of our communities and ultimately making our transportation safer and smarter. Imagine the possibilities.
So believe it or not, that video is like 3 or 4 years old. So this isn't exactly something that's, overnight has just come out. This is something that's been in the works for quite some time and at varying levels. You have some manufacturers, primarily in Europe, who are already building some of these things into cars. I know Volvo has been very much ahead of the curve on building in connected vehicles. BMW, not as much. I know Mercedes was doing quite a bit as well. And what you also have is, even here in the States, and I don't know the exact number, but I think it's about a half a dozen or so of what they call connected cities. And in these cities, they've built in some of the infrastructure to start having this enhanced communication system, and then they have a limited number of vehicles working with it. So there's a lot that can happen with connected vehicles and vehicle communications in the overall. I got a kick out of one of the things, John, you don't want it for a getaway car, but Ed said you'll be safe as you do. So, there's some laugh you can have with it, but imagine, all the potential to not go into that accident area, to have the stoplights be able to direct you away from it and around it and things like that. So there's a lot to this. So what are connected vehicles? Well, the broad definition, it's essentially a vehicle that can communicate with the internet, infrastructure, and or other vehicles. That's a really big generic description. But we already have a lot of this. For a lot of cars, if you bought a GM product for the last 10, 15 years, OnStar was an option. That is a level of connected vehicles. Most new cars now have that assist button, or if you've been in an accident and it calls an emergency service. Those are parts of connected vehicles. Some of the older cars, even in the 80s and 90s, late 80s, early 90s, you started seeing this RTTS, which was a secondary radios channel. And it was really big in Europe, that if there was an accident, they could send a radio signal out and it would come through your radio as like an alternative station telling you of traffic or weather advisories, kind of like the weather alerts that you can get. If you live in a tornado hourly, you have that weather channel going. So there's a lot of stuff associated with this that we have at different levels already. So why do we have them? Well, theoretically, we're going to decrease the accidents, injuries, and deaths. It is a big pathway piece for autonomous. We've talked about autonomous and the millimeter mapping and its critical need to know exactly where it is at any given time. Connected vehicle helps that, because when we get out of satellite line of sight, driving through a tunnel or driving downtown cities with tall buildings, satellite communications, satellite line of sight becomes difficult. Well, if we can now revert to an infrastructure-based system, now they've got a better key to where component locate or where the vehicle is all the time. We can help with traffic flow. If I know the car ahead of me is getting ready to slow down and my car can already correct, and we start to reduce that ripple effect, you throw the rock in the water and you get those waves that just go out endlessly. Well, how many times have you gone through stop and go traffic on the freeway and all of a sudden it clears up? Well, somebody brake checked somebody 2 hours ago and the ripple effect was still there. That's something that if the cars are talking to each other, they can speed up, they can slow down, they can control that flow much better. And it doesn't even take every car on the road. I know in one of the sessions that we did at Chabot, I showed a video where they had a half a dozen cars driving in a big circle. And it only took a time or two before they were all stop and go. They introduced 2 autonomous vehicles, and all of a sudden that circle just kept going. It's maintained movement. It was a slower speed, but it maintained movement with just 2 autonomous vehicles moderating so that it never got into the stop and go. So it doesn't take every car today. It just takes a rollout of vehicles. Plus, when you get to autonomous, you can now work on your way to work, or you can watch a movie or catch some extra sleep, whatever productivity is for you. You could do that because, hey, you're connected. You're already doing that. And some cars, we've already got Wi-Fi in them. So how do they work? Well, Wi-Fi is part of it. So you've got 2 different kinds of Wi-Fi. You've got an external Wi-Fi where the vehicle is talking to infrastructure. Some of the vehicle systems are already doing that. OnStar in some situations works off of Wi-Fi, not just 4G LTE. Satellite, when you think about it, we're already using satellite for HD radio. We're using, or not HD radio, we're using it for satellite radio like XM Sirius. We're using satellite for improvements on the nav. Well, it's not much more for the satellite to start providing more information or content. Or like we've been talking previous a little bit with Tesla's new, or with Starlink or whatever they're calling it, you may have an enhanced satellite connectivity to the vehicle. So now you can surf the internet over the satellite versus a 4G or a 5G or a Wi-Fi. We already have cellular. We've had it for quite some time, and even cars that you wouldn't think have cellular built into them as part of the accident location services. So if the vehicle gets in a wreck and an airbag's deployed, the cellular system built into the car can actually send a location and a deployment and a description of the vehicle to a service that shares it with first responders. So a lot of these things are built in. You can't call the car, but the car can make a call out. Bluetooth we've got inside vehicles now for connectivity with cell phones and headphones and all kinds of things. NFC is another type called near field communications. It's along those same lines as Bluetooth. It's a different operating structure and frequency, and it's actually much easier to connect NFC to a vehicle than it is through Bluetooth. NFC can recognize very, very quickly and actually have a little better communication rates. So all of those kind of things are what's going on. And then you start adding in public systems to where, you know, on those light posts, they've got receivers and transmitters that can take information in from the car, like we saw in the video of, hey, there's ice on the road or there's an accident, and it can share that back out to other vehicles or to first responders or road crews or whatever the case may be. A lot of this is going to be very dependent as we continue to go forward with our infrastructure, and we'll talk more about Wi-Fi and 5G here in a few slides. Phone applications, and this is one of the things that when you first started seeing hybrids and EVs, phone apps were almost, you know, connected with those cars from birth. People were able to get in and activate the battery charging or activate the climate and things like that. Well, now almost every new car, whether it's an internal combustion engine car or a hybrid or an EV, has apps that you can go in and see various things, and in some cases turn on the climate system or unlock the doors or roll up the windows, and all these different features that can be done, along with things like a health check, you know, where they're already looking at OBD2 faults and such. Some of the apps have a performance data built into it. You got a high performance car, it can tell you, yeah, you're pulling X number of G's or whatever, because those sensors are already in place. So it's very common with those. For the EV side, you see an expanded capability with them because they've got the battery connectivity on them. So with the vehicle having the large scale battery, it can do things like preheat the cabin or cool the cabin. You can open doors a lot more. You can do preconditioning. So if you drive an EV, preconditioning is a big thing. While your car is still connected to what we'll call shore power, the house, you can actually heat up those batteries. Whereas in a lot of cars, you don't have that capability, and part of battery technology is it needs to be at a certain temperature to work right. Well, where is it getting that heat? And well, it's pulling range from the batteries, so you go shorter distance. Well, if you precondition while you're still plugged in, you're not using your EV range, you're using shore power to heat the batteries before you leave. And you can set the climate to be a certain temperature before you leave home that day too. So these kind of things become a big piece with phone apps. And let's be realistic, hardly anybody leaves their house anymore without a phone. The phone has become that ubiquitous connection that people have all the time. And there's a lot more that we're going to see going forward that's connecting that phone with the vehicle, with your home, and all these things through what's called geofencing. Geofencing is a method to where it can recognize where your phone is, and you can have preset functions based on that location. So let's say when you get home at night, you don't want to answer any more phone calls. You could go into the software, set up a geofence that anytime you're at home, it won't let any phone calls ring. It'll go straight to voicemail. Or while you're in a car, it would automatically disable any texting functions or things like that, anything that's not connected through Bluetooth. So geofencing, think of that as a programmable location-based function. You can turn things on, you can turn things off. And as we've got that with us all the time, the more seamless that becomes, it gets a little more interesting on the things that we can do. We don't have to think about different things as we leave the house in the morning or we come home at night. So this next slide is going to talk a little bit about one of the common phone apps.
Check whether your car is charged and make sure it stays cool in the summer. All from your smartphone. With the HVAC control feature, you can adjust the temperature of your Hyundai Ioniq remotely, so that when you enter your car, everything is already set to your liking. BlueLink gives you quick access to important data about your vehicle, like driving information records, with just a few taps. It also sends vehicle reports directly to your phone and lets you keep an eye on key parts of your Hyundai, like the tires, brakes, airbag, and safety system. Having trouble finding your car? Just open the app and check for your vehicle's location with the Find My Car feature. The BlueLink Send to Car option lets you search for restaurants, gas stations, and other points of interest on the go, and sync them with the onboard navigation system. When you get in, your itinerary is already set up and your Hyundai is ready to go. And in case you run into heavy traffic, BlueLink also helps you find the best route in real time to make sure you get to your destination quickly and conveniently.
So we just recently bought a new Hyundai Elantra for our advanced vehicle programs. And the main purpose for that was for ADAS and stuff. It has BlueLink capabilities. This is an internal combustion engine car, not a hybrid, not an EV. So these apps are now really applicable on just about everything that's out there. And almost every manufacturer has an app that allow you various levels of accessibility to the vehicle. So what starts to bring all these things together? Well, Wi-Fi is a big part of it. So we're not just talking Wi-Fi outside. Really, we're talking Wi-Fi inside. And this has been something in a lot of cars for quite some time now, to where you now have passenger connectivity. The vehicle becomes a Wi-Fi hotspot, and now the passengers can connect their phones, their tablets, whatever, to that Wi-Fi and be able to access the internet and such from outside the vehicle. Whether you're using a Bluetooth device or you're using NFC, those are just the ways that the device, your phone, connects to the car for like cellular type of use. But with Wi-Fi, it's a whole different system. Now, they're typically going to require a contract. So if you're talking OnStar, which is the most known, even though pretty much every manufacturer has something like it, you have to have a package. That package includes minutes or data, kind of like your cell phone, and that allows that connectivity outside the vehicle. Okay, so if you want to get out of the car, you have to have those connectivity things. Stuff inside the car, you know, could you share one phone's hotspot to another? Sure, but that's phone to phone. The car's not involved. You also have connectivity to infrastructure, and believe it or not, OnStar and some of the US companies have been using Wi-Fi for vehicle connectivity. Most of Europe has been transitioning, you know, to the LTE, the 4G side. China has been in that. And right now there's a lot of discussion about 5G. And 5G is basically that next step in cellular, dramatically faster. I mean, it's crazy faster. And as well as the bandwidth the capacity can carry. Now, I know if you go on the internet, there's people that'll tell you, you know, it fries birds as they fly and everybody's going to be sterile because of the 5G. They've done a lot of tests, and I have yet to see anything from a testing agency that, you know, you would look at from like the government or the states or, you know, name brand groups that have said that there's an issue with 5G. China has basically said they're going to build cars going forward for 5G connectivity. Most of the Asian products, so you get in the Korean products, they've said the same thing. But yet GM has said we're staying on Wi-Fi. And that's going to kind of inhibit GM a little bit until they really adopt over, because the capability of data movement is greatly reduced. When you're talking 5G, it's up to 100 gigabits per second, which is about 100 times faster than 4G. So that's a big number. The other thing is something called latency. And if you've got kids or grandkids or students that play video games, and especially video games over the internet, you know, they push the button to shoot, and then there's a delay before the gun on the game shoots, and now they're dead and their guy never shot the other guy. That's latency. So it's a delay. 4G, Wi-Fi, things like that tend to have a fair amount of latency. 5G, the latency is very, very low. So it's really closer to real time than you see with 4Gs. And LTE and 4G are kind of the same thing. So some people think they're two different worlds. They're kind of the same thing. So as we see infrastructure improvements, we have those capabilities for 5G to come in deeper and deeper. Here in the Bay Area, there's not a lot of 5G. You get out of the Bay Area and get into other states, those 5G networks have come online much quicker. So hopefully we'll start seeing it here, even though you can buy some phones with 5G. Pretty soon every phone will have 5G and they'll have the infrastructure in place. So this next clip, it's just a couple minutes. It's a little chunked up, but it's just to give you an idea of the difference of 4G versus 5G. So it's basically some of those speed tests at a few different locations that have 5G. A couple of them, the phones are identical. So one's a 4G version of the same phone, one's a 5G. The very first one we'll see is actually two different brands of phones, but they're not necessarily looking at the phone, they're looking at the connectivity, but the phone could make a difference in that connectivity. Come on, magic internet. I'm going to click on something, it'll all blow up here. Nope, it's not going to give it to us today. But one of the examples that would come up in this is on this very first one. It was two different phones. They were in Illinois, in Chicago. And the 4G phone would be pulling like 20 or 30. The 5G phone was 120 or 30. They showed one, I don't know what part of the world it was, and the 5G phone was pulling down 500. And the 4G phone was pulling down less than 100. So sorry about the video. The site's a little clunky on that video, but it is a dramatic difference in the two. And that difference is what's going to help support these connectivity things. So the more data that can move, the faster it can move, the easier it is to share across vehicles, across infrastructure, the more connected we can become and the more benefits we can get from these things. So that's a good time to look in the questions. And now my background here is going to start opening up that video. So I'm going to close those out real quick. So let's scroll up and see what we got in here. Let's see here. You guys got talkative all of a sudden. Yeah, John had mentioned before, it looks like you don't want this car for a getaway car. And Ed's all, just think how safe it would be, you know. CK is like you watching the pizza delivery guy bringing your pizza to your house or seeing on your phone the Uber guy circling the block to find you. Yes, that's exactly the kind of things you're thinking. Kalon should help law enforcement a lot. Yeah, and at the same time, you're going to have all those arguments. Oh, Big Brother's watching, they're following you and all that kind of stuff. Turn your phone off. When it comes to the cars, that's going to be a different question. And we probably should mention it. You know, there's a lot of concern on the hacking of cars. And that's a whole industry trying to address that. And, you know, you can go surf around and you'll hear a couple instances, oh, well, they hacked this car. And one of the most popular ones was about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, where there, I think it was a Jeep or a Chrysler product in a parking lot. And these guys threw the brakes on, or they turned the brakes off in the middle of the parking lot. And oh my God, they hacked that car. Well, sort of. What they told you at the end of the video that nobody really watched, or the interviews around it, is they had that car the day before. And they actually downloaded software into that vehicle that created the accessibility point that they could then hack. So by nature, these cars are pretty locked down. They're pretty protected. Something has to come into them to expose them. So what you're seeing the manufacturers do is they're locking down software in a lot of different ways. I saw it on a new Toyota Supra, to where if you had something plugged into the USB port at a certain point in time, it wouldn't let the car run, because it looked at it and said, ooh, you might be trying to download some funky software to me, and it just wouldn't let it happen. It was a preventative or a protective measure. Does that mean at some point in some time that somebody somewhere is not going to hack it? They probably will. But it's probably going to have some mechanical connection at some point before that happens. Because right now, most of our vehicle connectivity is communication systems and body electronics. You don't see a lot of connectivity to the engine management side other than for fault codes. And the manufacturers could go in there and firewall that out, or just have that be a communication out from the engine control module to a body module or a communications module, to where they're never really going into the ECU to get it. The ECU is sending it out. So there are some layers in there, but there's a whole lot of protective stuff going on in there. And it's already pretty deep in software protection on cars. It's not easy to hack modules too much anymore. Ruben, don't forget about the parking issue. That's huge. That one alone, the ability for the system to tell you, and there's actually been some third-party phone apps. There was a company in San Francisco doing it for free open parking spaces. And, you could subscribe to that app and it would tell you where open parking spaces were in the city. John Taylor, failure to accelerate. Yeah, you might get a weird customer complaint, where you stepped on the gas and the car didn't go because the car was talking to another car that's saying slow down. You could see something like that. I don't know if that's what he's touching on. Blair, will they have electronic line marker? I don't know. Would they need one? I don't know. As we know our vehicle's location better, with whether it's cameras or satellite or whatever, do we even need a lane marker at that point? But for the human being driving the wheel, yeah, we need something to keep them apart. Steve K, how about notify the traffic light to turn green from red when there's nobody else at the intersection rather than forcing you to stop? Yeah, a lot of traffic lights, they're on a schedule, and they're going to cycle. And where you see that a lot is like on those expressways where the primary traffic direction seems to say green 99% of the time. And then on the side streets, you wait for an hour for it to turn green, because they're trying to keep the flow of traffic going one way. And that's kind of on we'll call it a stupid system, where it's basically running a set program. And in some cases, those set programs are based on Monday through Friday and then weekends and after hours and stuff like that. As you have greater vehicle connectivity and grid connectivity, those could get to the point where they are, very much communication and sensor based. And these connected cities that are running this stuff, their traffic system is set up with that. It is a very dynamic traffic control system, to where they see backup, they flow it. Where they don't see backup, they control it a little bit differently. Don Moore, Texas Instruments is big in this realm, especially working with European manufacturers. There's a lot of companies working very heavily in this. It's big, and that's, they've been forecasting it for quite a few years now, what the expectation is for the implementation. That, it's going to be like everything else. It's going to be part of our systems in the future. Find my car, 40 years too late. Aunt would lose her car all the time. Yeah, find your car, find me a parking space, find me a restaurant, all that stuff. It becomes much more possible as we have the greater connectivities. Jesse, my Chrysler van sends me an email every month with data from the car and status of different systems and tire pressure. Yeah, I've heard that on a few cars now, where you get that update email. Hey, everything's fine. The Loomer 86 Hyundai Excel was rated one of the safest cars in frontal collision. Seems the tow truck absorbed 90% of the damage. John Taylor, gigabytes and whole series of shows downloaded in a minute waiting for a millimeter wave. Yeah, one of the things that they talk about with 5G is that, that 2-hour Hollywood HD movie, comes down in a minute. It's just lightning fast. It's bandwidth. It's the whole 9 yards. Mark Childers, GM left us with years of drum brakes due to money in contracts. Maybe Wi-Fi is the same deal. It could be. And, GM, they're struggling with money, as are all the car companies right now. But they've been struggling with money. But this was even before COVID, when the press release that I was reading was coming out that they were staying with Wi-Fi. And it sounded like their initial purpose was there was already a Wi-Fi infrastructure in place. They didn't know the timeline on the 5G rollout. So on the short term, they were going to stay with what was there and not make big conversions on the vehicles to systems that weren't in place yet. So will they down the road? Probably once the infrastructure is in place. And that happens, rapidly month by month. Jesse, current Mopar products have to have a jumper wire installed to program the modules or replace a key fob. Yeah, so that's one of those protections that are built in. I know when I was doing BMW stuff, it could recognize whether the car was hardwired or not. It needed to see certain approvals, certain communication approvals between the equipment and the vehicle before it would do things. And a lot of that's been in place for some time, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. So I think that was all of them. All right, let's keep moving. So information apps. This is much more of that internet access type of links. You're seeing a lot of things in cars now where they physically have an office, like a Windows Office type of feature built into them to where they can text message through the car. And this isn't pushing buttons, this is voiced. You can have your contacts, you can have your calendars. You could be at home on your computer and set up a trip from here to wherever and have destination stops built in and send it to the car, and then open it in the car and have it populate your navigation for those points of contact. Now, a lot of times nowadays we use Waze and we build those things anyways, but this is something integrated into the existing vehicle systems. So what you're also seeing with some of these systems is the capability to pair two phones to the car at the same time. So most people right now, you get in a car, you pair a phone, and it's one phone that's paired to that car, and that's it. Some of these newer systems allow you to literally pair multiple phones to the car. So let's say you're the driver and you've got a work phone and a personal phone. You could have the personal phone paired to the car to stream music. You could have the work phone paired to the car for your work contacts, your calendars, your text messaging, and you can switch with just a push of a button, basically, back and forth between who is the primary, the work or the personal, and who is the secondary, the work or the personal. Those things are already in place with some of these vehicle systems. So these things, again, start to create more capabilities. A lot of these newer cars have internet access. They have a browser built into them, and you can go in and get onto the internet and go through certain apps. And a lot of these are tied to the phone. So they're using your phone's connection for it. But some with cars are tied into the car's connectivity. And again, you're back to those subscriptions and things like that. So let's see what a couple of these connected apps are. And the most common ones you'll hear about are Android Auto and Apple Car, or Apple Play, I should say.
Your Nissan and Android Auto. It's seamless. Now you have access to your favorite apps. Choose the navigation app you want. Start your route with your voice. Just press and hold. Or use your Nissan Connect touchscreen display. Waze on Android Auto gives you crowdsourced traffic updates. Don't let road closures or other hazards make you late. Google Maps is here too. Get real-time traffic. Now this is cool. Switch to satellite mode for a top-down 3D view. Hit the road with the Google Assistant. Ever wish you could find the cheapest gas? Now you can. Or discover a hidden gem, and more. It's all at your fingertips. Need to get things done? Look for this icon on Google Assistant compatible apps. One tap reminds you about your plans.
At 10 a.m., you have rock climbing with Brit.
And lets you know what to expect at your destination.
Right now in Long Beach, it's 76 and sunny.
Have a favorite music app? The Google Assistant pulls it up. Play R&B on Spotify. See what's playing with a single tap. Keep the music pumping your way. Your Nissan, your phone, your contacts. Android Auto brings them together, all within reach, so you're never out of the loop. Nissan Connect and Android Auto make every drive smarter.
So you'll see in a lot of cars now, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto being free and automatic. BMW was one. They were charging people initially to have Apple CarPlay, which is kind of crazy with everybody else giving it away. But that's almost commonplace now with cars, that you'll see that Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity built in. And a couple of slides down the road here, we're going to talk about some other connectivities. So vehicle to vehicle. So we've been talking vehicle to grid. We talked briefly through that first video about vehicle to vehicle. Biggest thing with vehicle to vehicle is they can share information. That car in the front can then send to the other cars located around it information like the road conditions, or hey, I'm going to accelerate, or I'm about to slow down, or there's something on the road. And that allows those vehicles behind to preemptively react. So if it knows I'm not braking, it's not slowing down. If it knows I'm starting to brake, it starts to slow down. And back to that ripple effect discussion that we were talking about. So vehicle to vehicle is really quite quick and easy to implement. All you've got to have is the vehicles having the capability. You don't have to build in infrastructure. You don't have to build in 5G or anything like that. It's literally one car talking to another car saying, here's what I see. And if you've got enough of those mixed in, you might help that traffic keep moving. You may keep some people from driving through potholes, things like that. Diagnostics. Vehicle communications start to offer some other things. And I think it was Jesse had said, hey, I get this report on the status of my car. Vehicle diagnostics, we think of it from the automotive side. Yeah, I get that report at the end of months that says I got no faults, and hey, I'm due for an oil change. Well, this is a big deal if I'm running a fleet and I've got tractor trailers all over the country or all over the expanded Bay Area or something like that, and I get a fault in one of my trucks. My truck can now call home and basically say, hey, I've got a fault and here's the fault code. And now the service department can say, okay, I need to get that truck out of service and I need to have these parts on hand because they're related to that item. So that speeds up the capability of that service department to turn that vehicle around quicker and get it back into the fleet, get it back on the road and active. So if this is a PG&E truck or a city bus or a fire truck, something like that, that lead-in time helps them manage their service schedule. It helps them manage their parts and things like that as well. Now you do see remote updates, and we see this primarily with Tesla. I think Volvo had said they were going to start doing a few, as well as BMW. We'll talk more about this next week when we get into programming. But over-the-air updates is literally the manufacturer can send a program fix. I won't say a whole new program because usually that's not a whole new program. It's just a fix or an update to fix a certain functionality or to even add a functionality. And that starts to speed up some service processes as well. Let's say that car sends a fault code, for whatever, and they know that fault is related to an error in the software. And if it's a small enough error, they might be able to push an update, have it download in that car, and the customer get in the car the next morning. Would you like to install this update? It'll take 2 minutes. Don't drive. Yes. Or no, wait until I get home tonight, whatever. So that starts to speed things up. And then also we know the vehicle health thing that Jesse had mentioned. So there's a lot to the diagnostic sides, and some manufacturers have had varying levels of this for some time. We do it on home PCs, or the IT department at your school. You got a problem, they crawl through the backside and they can see things, so they can manipulate the screen for you, the whole 9 yards. It's not that different from that mindset. But again, it's a connectivity-based thing. The vehicle has to have a sufficient enough connectivity for those functions to work. Navigation. And we've talked about this in the past a little bit. Basically, we're on a GPS, a global positioning system based navigation for our vehicles. And we know that there is a built-in offset. The military built that offset in for just the purpose of, if somebody shoots a missile from way over there and it's off by a certain percentage, it may not hit me, it may hit in the ocean instead. And over time, that's kind of gotten whittled down, and even your personal receivers are within 3 to 6 feet now. But going forward, like we talked last week, we're talking systems that are going to be down to the millimeter inaccuracy for that positioning for the vehicle to know exactly where it is at all times. It becomes more and more important. So improving GPS, moving to satellite. So we're no longer on that GPS stuff, we're on that satellite. Maybe we're on the satellite from Sirius FM because it can shoot a lot more than just music out. And now we have an even higher level of geopositioning, but now we can listen to music and we can get internet and everything else as these satellites start to come into a greater play. We can start seeing angles and slopes and vehicle speeds and all these other things because all of that can be picked up and shared and transmitted. So precision mapping is an evolution of vehicle communications with greater satellite. Home integration. And I mentioned earlier, your phone is ubiquitous now in society. I mean, I know for me personally, about the only time the phone's not around me is when I'm outside doing yard work. Otherwise, it's usually right around me somewhere. And most people are that way. In the younger generations, it's always around them. So as that technology becomes, more and more ubiquitous, it's in play all the time. And with the capacities of geofencing that I talked about, now we can start building in home integrations. So where things are tied into where is your phone? Oh, your phone's in the car now. It's connected to the car and the car gives me some controls. Oh, I'm at home. It's connected to the home system. And now I have some controls through there. So bigger and bigger pieces start to come into play for controlling the car, controlling your home, having automated functions. And a key term that comes into play is the Internet of Things, IoT. IoT is basically a kind of a standardization, think Bluetooth in a sense. It's a common language, a common function that allows your toaster to talk to your refrigerator, to talk to the television, to automatically flush the toilet, the whole 9 yards. It is that common language that allows these multiple systems to communicate and for you to communicate with them. Well, if you take that and you add another layer to it called if this then that, IFTT, and with that function, it basically says, well, if I turn on this light, I want it to turn these things off. Or if there's somebody on my security camera, I want it to show it on my TV screen really quick, and I want it to turn on my floodlights. All reactive things. So if you start tying in geofencing and the integrations and the phones, and if this then that's, and Internet of Things, all of a sudden, you just walk around and exist and things happen around you as long as you've got them programmed into play. So let's see one example of this. So that's a real good example of a lot of these layers coming together. The common piece being the cell phone. That mobile phone they got in the car, connected to the car, he was able to do his away functions. The away functions were tied in with that Internet of Things programmed into the house. When he was away, the sensor told him, hey, there's water on the floor. He was able to connect with his daughter. When they came home, hey, I'm coming home. And that turned on through geofencing if it was set that way, or through Internet of Things, and if this, then that's. So all of these things are very capable and possible as the connectivity improves through vehicle communications and infrastructure. Gesture control. Well, when I was with BMW, when the 7 Series first came out in the early 2000s, and we brought in that iDrive thing, that mouse in the center console. And, you know, the big promotion of that was it added 600 or 700 controls that you didn't otherwise have. And you stop and think about it, cars in the late 90s, early 2000s, they started having a lot of buttons on the dashboard. Just overwhelmingly confusing. People use the radio volume, they use the radio channel and the basic heater controls. And all of a sudden we're saying, here's 600 more things you can play with. Yeah, it's really cool when you dig down and play with them, but you don't do it all the time. So by getting rid of buttons and embedding them through other devices, through the iDrive and things like that, all of a sudden it cleaned up the car. I had less buttons and things, but I had more features for the people that wanted to play with it. Gesture control starts to kind of come into that same idea, to where there's literally a camera looking down from above the rearview mirror area, kind of like where you would see a typical sunroof control switch, that's projecting into that area. And as your hand reaches into that space and makes certain motions, you know, sweeping forward, sweeping backward, pushing, pulling, it functions to change a channel, volume up, you know, by turning your fingers, you know, screwing your finger, let me get the camera going right here, screwing your finger one way or screwing your finger the other way, or sweeping it away. All these kinds of things became recognizable commands that the system could do. So this was that step beyond a verbal command to a physical command without pushing a button, because, you know, God knows how much repetitive stress injury you're going to get by turning up your radio and turning down your radio all the time. And, you know, or pushing the button on your steering wheel, you know, you might pull a thumb or something like that if you're pushing that too much. So now we can just wave our hand in the air. Now I'm waiting for the special, you know, the special bird function. I want to see what the cars will do in the future when you flip the bird in that area and see what comes shooting out of the car. You know, maybe James Bond, and it pokes out some machine guns and clears traffic ahead. Those unlimited capabilities with gesture control. May not be as good in Italy, you know, hey, you know. So we'll see what happens. But right now, the few cars that have it, it's primarily tied into the entertainment and the phone calls area. But it's there. And you're hearing some more and more manufacturers talking about how do they bring in these other kinds of things. Voice commands has been around for a while. This isn't the newest of things, but it is something that has dramatically improved. When voice commands first came in, they struggled. They struggled with recognizing words. They immensely struggled with accents. And believe it or not, English is not English everywhere. You know, you've got West Coast and East Coast and Southern and Northern. It's a little bit different. And they struggled with learning those things. Over time, they've gotten extremely good at learning, to where now you can do a lot with entertainment, with your phone, with your navigation. You can have it take messages, all these kind of things. So the controllability through voice command is growing on vehicles quite a bit. In some cases, the newer systems actually have a script. So if you sit down and you read this kind of strange paragraph a few times, the system learns. And even if you have some accent, it starts to learn you. And when you say no or nah, it starts to figure out what you're trying to say. So it gets smarter through usage. And that's important to know for a customer who first buys their car, and they may have an accent. In some cultures, some of the vehicles just struggled with infinitely, and they're going to complain about it, and there's absolutely nothing you could do about it. but having that awareness to try to explain it to them would help. Most of the time in the US, it didn't let you change languages early on, but some of the systems nowadays, you know, you could have it be in a different language, and it supposedly learns and adapts and picks up the words in that different language as well, not just the communication information on the dash. So between the scripts and the greater capacity to learn, these systems have improved quite a bit. And they're very common on cars now. Very, very common. Onboard assistance. We saw this briefly with the Android Auto. You see this a little bit with Apple Siri. You can now add Alexa to your car. And essentially, it's using that AI that we talked about with autonomous vehicles. It's using that same mindset. So that thing that, you know, if you say, hey, Google, or hey, Siri, or whatever, that response rate. I literally looked today. Amazon has a thing. It's called the Echo Auto. It's $50. It plugs into your cigarette lighter. It's a Bluetooth device that will pair with your phone, and you can now do Alexa stuff from your car using that device. So what are you going to get? Well, you get obviously entertainment for streaming services and things like that. You can get navigation, you get the home connectivities, you can order things, you can make messages. So it gives you all that same kind of stuff that you may or may not be using on your cell phone or your Google Home or your Alexa or whatever you got in your house. Well, now it's in your car too. Not necessarily embedded yet, but I think somebody's coming out with that probably pretty soon if they don't have it already. It's just another capability that we're seeing come into these vehicles. And again, most of that's capable, not native to the car, it's capable because of the connection through your phone. So your phone being connected via Bluetooth or NFC to the car allows the integration of these apps and virtual assistants and stuff. Though the BMW system, I know, has a native virtual assistant in the car. And I can't speak to some of the others yet. Vehicle services. When we talk about vehicle services, the one brand that jumps off to everybody is instantly and automatically OnStar. You know, it's kind of like when you say Kleenex, okay? Kleenex, we all know what that is. Well, that's a name brand. It's not what it is, it's the name brand. Well, we've associated everything that's a car connectivity to OnStar because they were one of the biggest and one of the first. But just about every manufacturer has their own thing. Hyundai's got BlueLink, Ford has Sync or something like that. So everybody's got something. They are subscription based. Depending on, you know, when you buy a brand new car, sometimes it might have a 30-day, 90-day, 1 year, whatever. There's different subscription levels. So some of those levels might only give you accident response. Some levels might allow you to book tickets to the movies and set a dinner reservation through a concierge service. So depending on what you pay decides what you get for remote services. The majority of them have the built-in basic for an emergency. If there's an airbag deployment, it's going to send a message of vehicle positioning to the responsive agencies to send help. Okay. A lot of them, that's the basic level, but you even have to pay for that. Everything above that depends on how much more you want to pay. Some of these are expensive, hundreds, even pushing $1,000 a year for some of the really high level concierge stuff. Some of them, like OnStar, for a lot of the GM products, they didn't have a native nav in the car. You had to talk to OnStar, and OnStar would push the directions back down to the car or transmit them through the OnStar service directly. Remote services, some of them had that capability with unlocking the vehicle and vehicle health and location. And I love, it was one of the Bruce Willis movies, one of the Die Hard movies or something, one of his last ones. And they were trying to break into a car on the side of the road, and they took a garbage can and crashed it into the front bumper, and it made the car unlock, and they were talking to the services. That's all baloney. We know that. Those things don't happen unless the car is turned on and moving and all that other fun stuff. But it's just trying to show that there's a lot of those services available. And with OnStar and most of the others as well, if your car is stolen and you've got the PIN information, when you talk to the police, you can give them that PIN information. The police can now deal with those services and get the vehicle location and rapidly speed up the ability to recover that vehicle and things like that. So there's a lot of levels to the vehicle services and such. So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to take a look at some of the chat stuff before we go into some of the implementation capabilities for ADAS and all these other things. Let's see here. All right, Mike Hernandez, precision navigation improves identifying road edges. Yes, you know, don't even think about that kind of thing, to where, you know, going back to the whole, do I need road lines? Well, if I've got navigation that's narrowed down to the millimeter, I don't need a road line unless I've had a part of the road fall off. Let's see here. John Taylor, oh no, Big Brother's watching. They're already watching. Been watching for years. Mike Hernandez, remote diagnostics is the new method technicians are asked to perform. Yes. And you're going to see it more and more. You know, as the connectivity in the vehicle increases, you're going to get that vehicle that phones home to mama and says, I'm broken and here's what I've got on file. And those diagnostics might be taking place even before the car comes in, or it might be something that, hey, the technician can now crawl through, take a look and say, you know, it's nothing, we can reset that remotely, or it's something we need to have it here, or it's a software update, to where, yeah, the technician is going to be using that computer, PC, tablet, whatever, quite a bit more. Computer skills are going to be more, not less, and a cell phone is not computer skills. Robin, they're watching now, yes. Ed, is my toaster and all my other items talking about me? Yes, Ed, they see you walking around the house in your underwear, and, you know, they're just gouging their eyes out as they go. So, Mark Childers, Skynet has become aware. You know, I just saw a commercial. This is totally off subject. I just saw a commercial for a Fox show that's going to come up here pretty soon, and they're talking about an AI that's gotten loose. You know, and there's like crashing airplanes and killing people in a hospital bed. So, yeah, we're closer than you think. You know, who is it? Musk. Musk doesn't want AI out there. He's afraid of that. John Taylor, hope we don't get too complacent and forget these simple tasks when the grid gets taken out. Yeah, you know, we're at that point now. We are so dependent on things. You know, think about it. You go to the store, you couldn't buy something with cash because they don't know the price and they don't know how to make change. So when the power goes out, everything stops. So we're already in a lot of that stuff. DL Lamer, 2015 Toyota Camry has voice learn. And I'll ask you on that one, you know, was it a script? Did it have you say certain words over and over again? I'll look for you in the chat on your response.
It was a script, Kurt.
Okay, great. And
Yeah.
I've seen that with a couple of them. It's like a paragraph, and it's like, you know, it's like that old typing paragraph, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog kind of thing. It's not telling a story. It's just certain words because it hits certain vowels and consonants.
Yeah, it was a series of sentences. It would actually say it. It would be printed on the screen, but the voice would say it, and then you say it again.
Oh, wow.
And then another sentence would come up. It would say that one, then you repeat it. It goes through.
And did you notice that it became more responsive after you had done that than before?
I didn't try it before.
Hmm.
I just linked to it and went through the voice learn. Although it still couldn't recognize when I'd ask it to make a phone call.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, with BMW and stuff, we were teaching this, and I had a student who was an Asian, and he had a heavy accent, and he couldn't get him to do anything. And then I got in the car, and I tried to do something really simple, and it wouldn't do it for me either. And we all had a good laugh. You know, it's just sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. They've gotten a lot better. And through repetition, and that was the biggest thing that we saw, is through the repetition, they improved dramatically. And I'm not hearing, and I've not read about as many issues race-based with accents and things like that, as we saw early in the systems.
I've
So-
noticed that if I'm driving and I have my phone in the car, and I'm listening to NPR or something, and they'll say some sentence, and something in the sentence sounds like "Hey Siri," and the
beep.
phone wakes up and says, "I'm sorry, I didn't get that."
Yeah.
She just woke up just now. Sorry.
I did that last week with mine on one of the calls. It's like bang, it wakes up. If it's listening for it, the TV brings on the Alexa in the house every now and then. So it's gotten much better. So now that's great. I'm glad you chimed in with that.
It has to be listening to you all the time for it to pick up a prompt.
Yes. And that's one of the things they talk about with the Alexas and the Google Homes and stuff, is that you can go in, it's constantly recording all this stuff, and that you can go in and clear the histories.
I was teaching an air conditioning class, and I was talking about how you could use Lysol instead of Frigifresh or something. You just fog it in the inlet screen and let it blow, but don't be inside the car when it's happening or whatever. A few hours later, a student came up to me and showed me on his phone how he'd gotten an ad for Lysol.
or an Amazon buy now special thing. Oh yeah, it's crazy. The algorithms, and again, this is the AI working. Every time you go on the internet and you search something, for the next week, you're getting little pop-up ads on your page for those things. You got to go in there and clear that history out to get rid of the dumb things. But it's always looking. It's trying to focus that sale on you. You've been looking for this, I'm going to show you 10,000 ways to buy it. So yeah, never a dull moment. All right, with Ed's here. I remember the BMW commercial in which the driver was singing, the wheels on the car goes round and round. BMW came over the speakers and informed him the vehicle had informed that it needed service. The driver thanked the BMW service and inquired what else his car has been telling him. Yeah, nowadays, a lot of the cars contact the dealer directly or indirectly. They'll call in, they'll say, hey, my check engine light's on and I'm due for an oil change. That information will go back to the dealership. The dealership will contact the car or the customer through phone, through a text, through whatever, and say, hey, Mr. Jones, we just got a message that your car says the check engine light came on, and oh, by the way, you're due for an oil change. When can we get you in? And when you think about it, it's a little scary and annoying, but at the same token, I know with my cars, oh crap, I need to do an oil change. A week later, oh crap, I need to do an oil change. A week later, oh crap, I got to do an oil change. If somebody, if I'm driving my car and I'm not doing my oil change, somebody calls me up right there on the spot while I'm thinking about it and says, when can we schedule you? You're more apt to go ahead and make that appointment right then and there than forgetting about it for 2 or 3 weeks and finally getting around to it. So there's some logic to that capability in the car. David, does adaptive learning get lost with a battery disconnect? On the cars I was playing with, I didn't see that. And primarily because, the capacitors in the modules, it's like radio memory. In the older systems, you disconnect the battery, you lost the radio memory. You lost the clocks. Most new cars, you don't lose that now unless you go in and do a battery reset. You throw the two cables together after a little bit and it pulls all the capacitors down. So I can't speak for all of them, but I know the systems that I was playing around with, it didn't seem to lose the adaption on a short disconnect. Didn't try it for like a week at a time or anything like that. D. Limmer said, Siri, some of our shop cars do have native voice recognition with Toyota and Nissan. Robin could have used that vehicle unlock feature yesterday. Yeah, as long as you got your PIN code, they'll do it if the car is capable. And that's the other thing. Not all of, especially in the early systems, they weren't capable of that, that level of vehicle connectivity. OnStar was one of the first that allowed you to unlock the doors. BMW system, it was a long time before they did unlocking the doors or stolen vehicle location. And that was something that they didn't add in for quite some time. All right, so let's talk about these next pieces. We've had now 8 weeks of stuff shoved in our heads, and our heads are about to explode. And in the back of all that, we're going, well, how the hell am I ever going to put any of this in a class? We've got umpteen hours worth of this stuff. How am I going to fit it anywhere? So one of the things you got this week in the invitation was some curriculum links. So basically I gave everybody the 2 course outlines that I've got going through curriculum and everything right now. They just delayed them because of all the chaos at the end of last semester for what we're calling ATEC 92 and ATEC 93, which is essentially ADAS and advanced vehicle systems. So everybody has access to those, as well as the certificate that I put through. It did go through BACC approval already, and it ties in with those 2 classes. I believe I did our fundamental electrical, our body electronics, and our 2 hybrid/EV classes or alternative fuel classes along with it, and built out that certificate because it was more of the advanced system stuff and the foundation things with the electrical that they needed. And that was kind of the approach we had taken with that. I know Mark's from Evergreen also got dropped into that too, and we'll drag him into this here shortly if he can plug in. So how can I start to implement this stuff? And all along, and for a couple of years now, we talk about it doesn't have to be all or nothing. That's the big thing here. Don't go into this with the mindset it has to be all or nothing. Something is better than nothing. So how can I do it? Well, first and foremost, we got to look at what holds us all back, and it's time. Time's the excuse we all use. It's time to review your courses. It's time to focus on the new basics. I was on a webinar the other day when the instructor was talking about, I don't even remember what he was talking about, but the whole conversation with EVs and hybrids started coming up. And he was saying that, yeah, he had this one customer that was a school, and, the guys wouldn't touch him. There was like Consulab products the guy was selling. And no, I don't need any of that stuff. I don't have any room for it. He said, well, what are you teaching? Well, he started talking about, yeah, he's teaching points and condensers for a week. He's teaching distributors for a week. He spends a month and a half on carburetors and all this stuff. And the guy's looking at him like, really? So here they go into COVID lockout, and they're trying to figure out how to get classes going again. And all of a sudden the guy reaches out, okay, can you help me now? Can you help me with something? So I guess they had a long conversation, and the school board people were involved and everything else. And all of a sudden he started to realize that, yeah, I'm teaching stuff that really doesn't have much relevancy anymore. It has it to me, but it doesn't have it to our vehicles on our road. The average age of the car on the road right now is less than 12 years. It's like 11.8 something the last time I looked, which was in the last 3 to 6 months. Okay. So if we're talking cars that are, say, 12 years old, it's 2020, 2021 cars are on the showrooms. So 12, that's a 2008 car, right? That's long ways away from points and carburetors and feedback. Now, do they need to have an awareness? Yeah, but in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I can talk about points. Where do I need to put my time? So if we look at our classes, we take a hard, honest look and stop saying, what do I think I need to teach and what do we need to have our students know for the industry? Because all of our industry advisories are telling us the same thing. Every single one of them is telling us the same thing. We are dramatically behind at every level. Yes, there's some schools that have exceptions, but for the overall, we're behind. The technicians in the dealerships, the technicians in the aftermarket, they're behind. So we've got to take that tough look at ourselves and look at what we're teaching and say, how much of something do I need to do? Do I still need to talk about a carburetor? Yeah, teach them the circuits. Teach them what feedback did. That checks the box for California bar. Do we need to spend a week or a month on it? God, no. Do we need to be real deep involved in throttle body? No. Port and put the heavyweight in direct injection. Ignition systems, yeah, talk about the points for a blurb. Talk about a distributor for a blurb. Talk about electronic controls and coil over plug. That's where the weight is. Brakes, yeah, basic hydraulics is critical. Those things are critical. But we better be talking about stability control systems. We better be talking about emergency braking since it's going to be on everything. Most of the new cars have it now. It's a refocusing. And we've had that new basics kicking around for a while. These systems now make it almost mandatory. So it's possible to include these things. At the initial, you can go in there and say, it doesn't require depth, it just requires awareness. The stuff we're doing right now would give your students 1,000 times more on it than they have today. And we've spent an hour and 23, well, not even an hour and 23 minutes talking about vehicle communications. In a semester, could you find 10 minutes, 15 minutes to talk about a topic relevant to that thing? So it's not about creating a new class. It's how do I embed it into a class? Or I can do a new class. I can create a capstone. God forbid we teach how to actually put all this stuff together at one time versus just teaching brakes or steering or engine management. Let's build it. Let's build it together and how teach the students how the car is reacting to all these systems taking place. Everything's in play. When we talk ADAS and especially autonomous, all these systems are in place, all happening right now, interacting, interreactive, interresponsive. So we could build new classes, we could build new certificates. If we're going to build them, let's build them industry focused. Let's build them adaptable and modular, because we're chasing enrollment. We've been chasing enrollment. We're going to continue to chase enrollment. Well, we've got a huge standing audience dying for education. Industry, the fleets, the aftermarket, they want into classes that are relevant to them, that doesn't take a semester, doesn't take 10 hours a week, that is clear, defined, to the point. What do I need to know? What do I need to be able to do? We've got that information. We just got to whittle it down and find it. And by making it modular and scalable, all of a sudden, industry can now attend it. Just something to think about. So, big red letters there, the new basics. Think about them. I don't care what ASE says. ASE, you will cover it, all the ASE topics without a problem. But we'll put the focus where it needs to be, which is preparing our students for today's cars, not the cars from 30 years ago. So I did ask on there, hopefully everybody read it. Post in the chat what you will add in the fall 2020 semester. Well, you're thinking, well, I don't know. There's been so many things. Well, I got a list, and I know it didn't make it into Pam's email, but I did send it to Pam, and I'll resend it, or she'll send it out again. And essentially, I took a lot of these topics that we talked about in these sessions. So like that first one, cameras and sensors, where would I drop that in a class? I would talk about it in a body electrical class or an electronics class. Do I need to get really deep? Nope. Could I do the cameras and sensors for an awareness in less than an hour? Easily. Maybe 20 minutes. Would that be enough for the students to now have an awareness when you talk about a system and they can go, oh, it's using radar. I have an idea what radar does. Oh, it's using a camera. I have an idea what a camera does. It's not about days, weeks, months. It's not even about being in the lab with some of this stuff. Make them aware of it. Mention it very quickly, very easily. Emergency braking. If you're teaching a brakes class, how are you not bringing up emergency braking? 2019, every Toyota had it. A ton of cars have had it for a few years, and by 2021, everybody's going to have emergency braking. And it's not a federal mandate. It's actually a universal handshake that the manufacturers had done. I did a lot of research on it, and it was not pushed down by the government. It was the manufacturers stepping up and saying, yes, we're going to do this. And a lot of them, it was like 15 of them already got it in place. The rest of them will have it in place to meet that agreement. Vehicle programming. Everything on the car now is going to have software updates. It's got to be there. Got to be in there somewhere. Hybrid and EV safety. I don't care what the technician in your shop, if it's just the oil change guy, he's still going to do work on a hybrid. He's going to do an oil change. It doesn't have to be a specialist. That's a new fundamental. They need to have that safety awareness across the board. So there's a lot of these things that in a very small amount of time, and electrical and body electronics is going to carry a lot of it, fully understood. But if I talked about regenerative braking, everybody assumes regenerative braking is, oh, well, that's an EV or a hybrid only. No, it's not. A lot of internal combustion, I'll tell you right now, BMW, they consider the alternator that charges on D cell, which is the primary programming for that alternator now, charge on D cell so that we don't have a parasitic draw on the engine at idle and acceleration, they consider that regenerative braking. Has nothing to do with a high voltage battery. So in a brakes class, do I need to mention regenerative braking? Yeah. Could I do that in 15 minutes? Yeah. And if you take one of these topics and you drop it in a class, at the end of the semester, if you've dropped 3 or 4 topics in there, you might have found, maybe have an hour, maybe even 2 hours worth of content to give them an awareness. Telling me you can't find 2 hours in your semester lecture. Well, drop 4 days out of that points and condenser stuff, and all of a sudden you got a whole extra day. It's doable. It's there. A lot of it was us coming up to speed on it. Well, we've got some foundation now. Now we can start plugging some of these things in. So Mark, are you in there? I know he wanted to talk about the evergreen stuff a little bit.
Hello.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us about the stuff that you shared?
So I don't know if Pam was going to show.
I didn't put it into the slides to show, but everybody got it in the email. So if you could just talk about it.
Okay. So so the class that we're teaching in the fall is going to be the calibration class, and we have several Hondas because we're lucky to be a PAC program, and so they've given us a few Hondas with the cameras and radars and such. So we have CRV, we have a Fit, Civic, that have, I think there's about 5 systems that we have there. And I personally haven't taught the class. David Ames has taught it. I don't know if he wants to say anything about how that went, but basically there's a few aiming. Okay, so we talk theory, right, like you're doing, and then we have I think it's 4 or 5 aiming exercises. Mm-hmm. And then the other class we had is it was more noise and vibration. Okay, so and this is geared towards the collision certificate. Mm-hmm. That is really close to being passed now, but so that other class is more like what a collision technician would find after they did a repair if a weld wasn't quite correct and it slapped and banged or whatever, wind, noise, and things like that. So those were the newest classes we did. But also, Kurt, we've just incorporated so much of what you and Mike taught us last time, and just the urgency of it. Mike and I and others have started, now focusing a lot more on CAN and also these mitigation systems, like you said, a brakings class. So actually in the fall of last year, I was talking about CAN in the brakes class. I did a whole session on it and mitigation systems and showed them videos, which I hadn't done before. So you can just take your program and install a lot of this theory, and you don't have to really change that much. The only thing is like that aiming class is a nice exercise, because then they're ready when they get to work. They already know someone how to set it up, and it's not totally foreign to them.
Yeah, and with something like that, that's going to be one it's going to be more involved to integrate, because it's going to have equipment, it's going to have a vehicle and things like that. But even if you didn't find a way to build it into multiple classes, you also have that opportunity. If you have a car and you have the equipment, have a shop day. Have it in between the morning and the afternoon session, in the afternoon and the evening session, and do a live demo. Granted, right now with COVID, it's a whole different ballgame. But you can have a vehicle set up and in a 30-minute thing, kind of give them a quick visual of what it takes, or a walkthrough, or get your video cinematography program to come over with a bunch of cameras and videotape the dumb thing and show it to them, or use the videos that are online. Again, the more we expose them, the more interested they get. For me, there was a couple of things in there on that list: autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles. Put it in your intro. Let's get them excited, because this is the future of cars. This is what's going to be in cars as they go into these industries. It's not about a whole new class. It's about the topics. And it doesn't have to be all through the nuts and bolts. It can be that 30,000-foot view of a system that makes them go, wow, that's cool. Or that video that's 2 minutes long that shows them something. I want to take a look at some of these. Go ahead, Mark.
By the way, I was going to say also, because we have partnerships with high schools and stuff, it's a great recruitment tool. When you talk to students about, you know, the collision technology or flying cars or anything like that, it really is a magnet to get them into the field, you know, without all the
share the sizzle.
Yeah.
So
I also wanted to pick up on what Mark said in terms of your partners, our employers, our automotive partners like, you know, Honda, et cetera. All of you have major OEM partners for the most part. Please talk to them if you do not have a car with ADAS systems already on them. If you have older cars and not the newer cars, really begin that conversation about having them upgrade your inventory with them to the newer cars. I was approaching Subaru about this last year, and again when they invited me to the ADAS training in January, and they were open to upgrading and looking at the inventory that they have with the existing 9 community college partners. And then COVID hit, so things have been kind of put on hold for a while. But this is an opportunity to actually get the ADAS cars into your shop without having a huge outlay of money. And if you need help with this, I will get involved and talk with the OEMs and begin that lobbying campaign with them, because they can step up to the plate and help us at this point in time. And also, I'd like to encourage those of you who haven't, although we have quite a number of the colleges who have used SWP money as part of this RJV, your local share money, to buy the calibration equipment, whether it's like Kurt getting it from Autel or City College getting it from Snap-on. There's a couple talking to Bosch. This is probably the last year where we're going to have really strong workforce money. Those programs are still alive, and a lot of that money was put on hold at your colleges because they were afraid with the COVID-19, they wanted to have some reserve money. Well, Gavin Newsom has said we have that money for year 4. So we have money, and this is the time to tap it, because the next couple of years are going to be really tough years for funding from any source, because we're heading into a huge recession, depression. Actually, we already are. But everyone's distracted by COVID-19. We haven't really focused on the impacts of the economic decline that we are currently in. So please, this is the time to do it. If you need help with this, I'm available to talk with your administrators and your employers. I'm going to try to help a couple of the colleges get through this the next couple of months because it's important that our faculty get upskilled, and it's even more important, of course, for you to share that knowledge with our students to get them ready, because it's only going to be having higher skills that gets them jobs in the next couple of years. I've already been told that by several of our key employers in the region who have been hard hit with layoffs already. In fact, 2 of them told me straight out, keep your students in school the next year or 2, make sure they upskill in ADAS and their computer skills. This will give them an edge when they're getting hired over the experienced mechanics who've been laid off, because they're really looking for students with those higher computer skills and a better understanding of vehicle systems and ADAS. And I hope to talk about this further with you guys, but this is something that has come up so many times the last 4 months with the employers in your regions. So this is the time to actually make this happen. Mark, thank you.
So I want to hit these last chat things here and recognize the people that chimed in. So Jesse, we also look at getting CID course set up with it. Yeah, I started looking at it and I couldn't figure out how to submit. And I had asked Pam, and she was trying to find out from her side too. So I don't know the process of who comes up with the idea to start creating it, because that was one of the early things I wanted to do, was I wanted to get it to CID and get it branded so that it'd be easier to adapt. And I've looked on their website and I don't see a process, like an application process to do it. So if anybody knows that, shoot me an email, because I'm more
still
than willing
researching that as well.
Yeah, I'm more than willing to do it. He also mentioned I want to thread the ideas on it in our intro classes to help hook the students and reinforce the need to understand the basic systems in order to get to the advanced systems like ADAS. Yeah, use it as a staircase. You got to know these things to do that. D-Limmer intro classes, introduce all the topics, not in depth, just a brief overview. That's all it takes. Get them excited, get them interested. It's already on the cars. This isn't the future. Kalen, show it has a way of the future. Yeah, and except for it's on the car now. Jesse, 08 emissionized diesels and full OBD2 on everything. Yeah, 08, yeah. OB2s on motorcycles. I just saw a thing about a week ago. BMW is putting active cruise control on some of their motorcycles.
Wow.
There you go. D-Limmer, you think your foot's creating brake pressure? Exactly. You know, the drive-by-wire, it's a big thing. You know, get them to understand that whole drive-by-wire thing. There's a lot more going on than you pointing and turning and pushing and pulling. Mark, TBI, another slow implementation of tech due to contracts. Yeah. FI on a carb manifold. Yeah. I talk about carburetors as, yeah, it's a bucket of gasoline that we dump down. You know, it's about that accurate. Ruben, proceeds of submitting my hybrid course for approval, engine performance, plan to add a week of intro to ADAS. I've included it in everything. I've done it for a long time. You remember, your course outlines are the minimum, not the maximum. Mark, in the fall, I'll be teaching our mitigation systems class. We have 4 different aiming calibration exercises. Also teach more about CAN and DSO in all of our classes, and this is what Mark had mentioned. Yeah, that was one thing I've picked up in a lot of these webinars that I've been sitting on lately. The ramp up of discussion regarding bus diagnostics is really aggressive right now. A year ago, it was ADAS. Right now, everybody seems to be talking about bus diagnostics. And I think as a lot of these systems are getting older, they're starting to see more bus failures. People got complacent with it because we taught bus really heavily 15 years ago and kind of backed off. And now with ADAS and as you've seen in the diagrams, there's a power, there's a ground, and there's bus. You know, you got to know it. Mike, advisors should help us decide what goes and what gets added. Remember, curriculum cannot be changed without advisory minutes that specifically identify requirements. Exactly. And I know I've brought it up in our advisories, and our advisors go, why are you talking about taking that apart to that level? I really need you talking about teaching an adaption. Or I really need you talking about doing the bus diagnostics. So that's not going to be a problem with your advisories whatsoever. And we all know nowadays the bumper to bumper books that we are, using, that with the ASC requirements, it has to be a task, a lecture, or a homework assignment. Those bumper to bumper books, if you basically assign every chapter, you've ticked off every box and they never have to touch a car. But yeah, they should be touching cars. Well, it's the same thing. I might not talk about points in an ignitions class. I can have them read that part. I'm going to spend the time on the computer control side of it and on the coilover plug side of it. It's just how you apply it. It's how you manage your time. Ed, 2BI, just a quick switch from carbs to FI without changing much until the manufacturer's geared up. Yeah, except for I was working European cars and we had fuel injection in the 70s. So, hey, go figure. GM had it in what was 60-somethings with the Rochester fuel injection. Soren, how's the fall 2020 enrollment in our programs? Chabot, we're looking pretty good. We split a lot of our labs to go from classes of 24. We took them down to 12s and then had 2 sections. And, we're seeing the one section fill up very, very quickly and the second section being about halfway. So instead of being 24, the last time I looked, a lot of the classes were in that, say, 14 to 16, 14 to 18, which isn't too bad. I mean, enrollment, all the schools have been chasing enrollment for a little bit as it is. So add to the complex of all the other stuff and you're not that out of line. Ruben, at Skyline, we got limited to 16. So most of the classes we have wait lists. Yeah. We tried to push for that and we got pushed back. Cypress T10 is full. D-Limmer, 4 sections of intro full and waitlisted. Wow. And they're 100% online. We're hybrid. for most of our classes. We'll have one day of lab and then online labs and then all lecture online. Let's see here, Mark. Pittsburgh High Auto Class 1 full and waitlisted. Robin, 120 students at Monterey High, 4 classes start with distance learning. Joseph, he's got to run. Cliff, 30 students enrolled in my online intro to hybrid.
Wow, cool.
Yeah. You know, and there's a lot of stuff out there. Don't be afraid to utilize videos. I'm actually doing, you know, some online lab stuff. So the research stuff I would have them do in class, you know, looking up information or stuff. I'm making them do it at home. You know, contact ShopKey and AllData and get an open login to share off your subscription, and that way the students can do it at home. D. Lemmer, 1 section intro to hybrid, full and waitlisted. 2 section diesel foundations, full and waitlisted. Rick Marshall, been covering ADAS and advanced electrical lecture and task sheets in the lab using 4 vehicles we have. It's awesome. Augustus is out. D. Lemmer also been mentioning some ADAS and brakes and chassis class for years. Yeah, it's relevant. Yes to computer skills. Yeah, can't say that one enough. They got to go use that PC. Sorry, I got to. Robert was out. Mark, how about automotive computer classes, short in duration, covering the search skills? That'd be good. You know, what I've done with our service advisor class when I built it, I built in 2 gen ed classes. One of them is basically fundamental computer applications. So how to use a computer, how to use Word, Excel, things like that at a basic intro level. And the other one was business communications class. I built that right into our service advisor certificate. So they do those 2 classes. They do our service advising. They do our intro to auto and I think our electrical or something like that. It was only like 4 or 5 classes, really geared more towards a service advisor, but they needed to have communication skills and they needed to have some basic computer skills. CID process flow chart. Cool. Pam, can you do me a favor and download that? Because I know when I click on stuff, things blow up.
Yeah, I did. Jesse, thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Chip, thanks. John Taylor, don't anybody know if Mitchell Systems will do an open online login? Yeah, because it's Mitchell ShopKey. And what we did is Eric, I think he might still be online. He reached out to our reps and got them to basically provide a login. Essentially, it's the same login I think that we would be using on the on-campus computers. And they were okay with it being made available. I think once we go back to a lockdown environment that we'll need to get that changed so that we're not populating the world with information, but it'll get us through. And I saw Eric's mic come on. Eric, you there?
Yeah, we got the login, but we need to renew it. They gave it to us until the end of August, and then we should call them and renew it, and they will extend it as long as the lockdown is in place.
Perfect. I hope you've got that on your list of things to do. But yeah, so I mean, and I heard about it on one of these from somebody else saying they were doing it. And luckily Eric had some of the previous connections with them on stuff at our place and asked him to go reach out onto it, and didn't sound like it was a big problem for him. I actually wanted to see if we could get it set up to where they had to access through Canvas. So that would hopefully alleviate some of their concerns about open access. But that proved to be really complex and troublesome. They basically said, hey, here's an access, here's a login, and here's a password. Have a nice day. And it works. So that's huge. They do our version of ProDemand. Yeah. Guys, that's all I got. So we got one more day programming. Not a lot of pictures. I'll tell you up front, not a lot of pictures, not a lot of video, a whole lot of talking. Lots of stuff. We'll go into diagnostics a little bit. We'll go into what is software, what's a program, what is programming versus what's in coding. We'll go into some troubleshooting, some problems, over the air, hardwire, vehicle setups, a whole lot of stuff. So next week will be busy. But unless anybody's got anything else, and unless Pam's got something else, thanks for staying. I know we ran a little long to really get everybody in on this. So see you next week, everybody. Oh,
Kurt,
go ahead,
thank you
Pam.
so much. Everyone have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just moving people into the waiting room.
Yeah, I'm copying the chat.
Perfect. Because yeah, if you can send me that link, I might be able to go in there and copy it now. I just work because like when I click to mute my mic, that's when it froze the other thing. It's really weird
Yeah,
how it does
no,
that.
I've had that problem before myself. It's dangerous.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why I try not to do anything in the chat window or the participant window once I start because it seems to pause the presentation and stuff.
Yes.
And you go ahead and shut down record?
Oh, I'm still in my Word document. Let's get back to it. We can shut down record, yeah.
Yeah, I'll stop it.
There we go.